Welcome back to another. Oh God, what did I call this series again? SCP Files Unzipped. I was gonna say Anime
Great
Rambles,
start.
and I was like, that's not right. Anywho,
Great start.
today we're going to be talking about Dr. Jack Bright, the madman of
Yes.
the SCP Foundation. Now, I've got a
Yes.
whole
Dr. Bright.
I got a whole sheet
Uh
of notes on Dr. Bright's family, but you tell me what you know about Dr. Bright first.
the SCP organization is Alice in Wonderland, and Dr. Bright is the Mad Hatter of the group. He's insane and very, very unstable, and there is a list of things that he's not allowed to do in certain sites because for some reason or another it ended up with terrible things. There is an SCP that is a medallion that basically turns people into Dr. Bright.
This is true.
Needless to say, the guy's a bit of a mad lad, honestly.
So, Dr.
He's
Bright,
also absolutely off his freaking rocker.
Dr. Bright, you would think he's like the black sheep of his family, right?
No, not at all.
No, yeah. His entire family is pretty much just as fucked up as he is. So,
Also,
we're only going to be talking about his immediate family. We're going to be talking about his mother, his father, and his siblings. Because, damn, if we have to delve into shit outside of that, it's just going to get even more wacky. And I don't feel comfortable enough with the information that I know about them in order to express it to you in a way that I feel comfortable with. First, let's talk about his parents. Their names are Adam and Evelyn Bright. So, his parents joined the SCP Foundation in the 1800s. Yeah, he's old. When they joined the Foundation, I believe his father Adam was a junior research assistant, and Evelyn was a medical assistant or a nurse or something like that. And over time, they worked their way up throughout the facility. But they fell in love, got married, and started having kids when they first joined. It is also rumored that Adam, the father, is one of the founding members of the SCP organization, which doesn't make a whole ton of sense because he started as a junior researcher. So I choose not to believe that
right.
canon. Um, all right. So Jack is one of 5 siblings. And wow, is he not out of the ordinary? um I would say Bright was the most normal of his siblings. He joined the SCP Foundation as a researcher, and he worked his way up. Not very notable, but he was assigned to research an amulet. And oh my god, why did I not write down the name of his amulet? I wrote down all the other SCP numbers, but not the one for his amulet.
Well, great.
Nothing a quick Google search can't solve. SCP 963 was the object he was set to search. I'm going to write that down, or else I'm going to forget. Okay, cool. So, 963 was discovered in a home of a person who was heavily into the occult, and he had just committed suicide, surrounded by like all these ancient tomes and like occult stuff. And this medallion was the one thing that stood out to the police that investigated. because it literally could not be damaged in any way. And they're like, weird. And then the SCP organization said, mine. And they took it into custody. Originally, it was a safe class SCP. It was just an amulet that couldn't break. And they had Dr. Jack Bright alone researching it. And they were trying to understand why this dude committed suicide. Was it compelled by the amulet? But he couldn't really figure it out. One day, Dr. Jack Bright was transporting his amulet across the facility when SCP... Oh my god, I think I memorized this number. Yes.
He thinks, people. He thinks.
I did memorize this. When SCP-076, aka Abel, decided to breach containment. And let's just say Dr. Jack Bright died on this day, buried in rubble. And because he was holding the amulet, his consciousness was permanently linked to it. And therefore, he has become effectively immortal. Now, this was only discovered when a D-Class picked up the amulet during cleanup of the site after the containment breach, and that D-Class started claiming to be Dr. Jack Bright himself. And they thought, wow, that's weird as hell. There's no way that's true. And then they interrogated him and found out, wow, it is indeed Dr. Jack Bright. After a little bit of research, they determined that Dr. Jack Bright was suitable to continue working as a researcher for the SCP Foundation. And that is the most basic thing about him. Now, this was well over 100 years ago, and Dr. Jack Bright is still alive today. And he's had a long, long life with many twists and turns. And he hasn't always been the mad scientist that we've seen in many of these stories, or like many tales about.
Probably why he's insane, because he's lived so long.
Yes, partially. So, I have a quote. Okay, here's a quote. I'm afraid, Clef said, of what it will imply when the most powerful and influential member of the Foundation is an SCP himself. I worry that, not now, not 100 years from now, but someday, you have lived so long and become so strange that you are no longer human. And by then, you may be too powerful to stop. So that threat must be nipped in the bud now. What if I never become a threat? You will, Clef said firmly. No one who lives as long as you can stay human.
I mean, he has a point.
He does have a point. And Dr. Bright is already
Dracula.
starting to lose it.
It's like Dracula is a perfect example of that.
But he was very normal when he actually joined the facility. And he joined for like pretty pure motives. So, as I've said, he is one of 5 children. The eldest of which is Mikhail. There's Mikhail, Claire, Sarah, and TJ, along with Jack. Now, Mikhail's the oldest and joined first, and he is probably one of the agency's favorite agents. Okay, so what was I saying? I can't even remember anymore.
You're talking about how Dr. Jack Bright was at one point sane.
Yes.
I know it's hard to believe, but he was.
The first of Adam and Evelyn's children to actually join was Mikhail, and he joined the SCP agency early, and he became an invaluable resource, garnering the title as Agent Cowboy as a field agent. After he was joined, well, not after. After he was born, then came, I believe, Bright, then Claire, and then TJ, and then Sarah. Now, their last child, Sarah, was stillborn. And Adam, in an effort to try to save her, decided to break a protocol and utilize various SCPs to try to save his dead daughter. One of these SCPs that he decided to use was his second youngest son, TJ. Now, TJ is an SCP himself. He's SCP-590, and he has a ability where he was, I believe he was, 9 at this time? Something like that. Where he has an ability to take on any injury and heal whose injury he's taken on. So basically, if you have a broken arm, TJ will come up, he'll touch your arm, and then he'll activate his power, and then he'll take on the broken arm and heal whoever had that broken arm. Pretty simple.
Right.
Now, when he hit puberty, he lost the ability to control this. And he would just start taking on any injury, no matter how minor, no matter how major, and just continuously take it on. And so he actually succeeded in... Adam Bright actually succeeded in reviving his stillborn daughter, Sarah. But she became SCP-321 and has a couple of anomalous properties. The first of which is she doesn't stop growing. She is now at about 3 meters in height, and she needs constant medical attention to actually keep her alive at this height, because humans are just not supposed to be that tall. She's malformed, misshapen. She has the cognitive function of a 1-year-old, so she can't even speak. Various times, Adam has tried to get his daughter out of the SCP organization, but each time it was rejected. He tried when he was a research assistant. He tried when he was their actual researcher. He tried when he was a site director. And finally, he tried one final time when he was a site director. Each one of these times, he was shut down immediately. And his daughter is still in the SCP organization to this day. She's still labeled SCP-321, and she has been in the SCP custody for over 100 years. Yes. As for sad. TJ, who also has a SCP number, because of what his father did when he decided to bring his daughter back, they were both taken into SCP custody, and he is used as a substitute for SCP-500, which are those red pills that can heal anything. Unfortunately, he's human, so he feels immense pain every time the SCP organization uses him. And when TJ actually became an SCP and the organization took him in, that's when Dr. Jack Bright joined the SCP organization to kind of work at the same place his brother was and maybe try to get him out of there. Unfortunately, he never succeeded to get his brother out of there, and instead he elected, seeing the pain that his brother was in, to have him cure multiple cases of mental retardation in order to reduce his brother down to a state where he doesn't have to think about the constant pain and agony and torture that he's under constantly. Now TJ Bright spends most of his time watching children's TV and coloring with crayons.
That's both beautiful and sad, and also really messed up in a way. It's thoughtful, but it's really messed up.
Yes. As for Claire, she joined the Serpent's Hands, which we talked about briefly in the Scarlet King video, where basically it's the opposite of the SCP organization, where they want all this information to be just out to the public, and they want everyone to know about what's going on, and they think the consolidation of information, the secrecy, only hurts the world and not helps it. So they want to bring everything the
Yeah.
SCP organization is doing to light.
They're not the smartest knives in the drawer.
Yeah, she also has an ability to see the future.
Oh, for the love of Pete. What is with every single one of Dr. Bright's family being freaking SCPs?
Well,
Or
Evelyn
having
Bright
some
in her later
strange
years,
ability.
Evelyn Bright in her later years garnered the title the Mother of Monsters because one of her hobbies was to create creatures unspecified.
What?
Yeah, very weird.
What? I'm sorry. You know, at some point you gotta say, there is something like astronomically wrong with this family. They're not terrible people, but there's something just karma, the world, universe, God does not like this family for some reason.
Yeah.
Like they have a curse.
As for Mikhail Bright, Agent Cowboy, he and his father both went on to become O5 council members at the same time, but because of Agent Cowboy's earlier years, he managed to father an enormous amount of children with many, many women all across the world. He has so many children that in the SCP organization, they refer to his children as the unnumbered brood.
Ah, so he's going for the Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan world record. Jesus Christ.
Yes. I don't think it's labeled how many like that number is, but I would say he's pushing it. He's pushing it.
He's he said, "I want to go past Khan. I won't stop until all the people of the world have 100% of my DNA in them."
Yes, I'm pretty sure Adam and Evelyn Bright are dead now, but Claire,
Yeah, hasn't it been 100 years?
yes, but when you have
Yeah,
access to
I get it.
SCPs,
Yeah, that doesn't really mean anything.
yeah. But I know for a fact that Agent Cowboy Mikhail, Claire, and Jack Bright and Sarah are still alive. Not so sure about TJ. He might have expired already. I haven't looked into his file personally. But that's the Bright family. Dr. Jack Bright, every month he gets a new body. He gets swapped out. And he, over the years, has watched in being a site director and doing various things for the SCP Foundation. Just watched everyone around him start to grow older and realizing that he is the one constant in the SCP Foundation. All the doctors would change, all the O5 Council would change, all the protocols, procedures, and SCP would change, but one thing that would stay the same was him. And this weighs incredibly heavily on him. This sense of no one else really matters but me. I'm the only one here who is going to be here at the end of time. I'm the one thing that is the constant about this whole operation. And this kind of started to wear at him mentally. Another big thing that really wasn't good was when Dr. Bright and various other researchers were kidnapped by terrorists. And the terrorists began to execute each member of the researchers on camera. But before they would shoot them, they would, with gloves obviously, take the amulet off of Bright, put it on a researcher, execute that researcher, put the amulet on the next researcher, execute that researcher. So each time they were killing Dr. Bright.
Okay, but why?
Terrorists.
Okay.
Mainly because they're terrible people. Like, I don't know too much about that incident. I would have to look into it a little bit more. But over the years,
Needless to
Dr.
say,
Bright.
this is probably why Dr. Bright is just insane.
Yeah, working at the SCP organization for such a long time definitely has a toll on not just the mind, but also on the way you
Dude,
think.
that was one of the biggest understatements that you've ever freaking said. It's like you were like, well, working for the SCP organization does take a toll. No. Having your entire family work for the SCP organization only to realize that three of them are basically walking dead men anyway. and having one of them being completely against who you are, then going across and getting captured by freaking terrorists only to die multiple times, and you've already lived 100 years old. I'm surprised that Dr. Bright hasn't pulled a Cars from JoJo and just like eventually just stop thinking. I would have done that. It's just like screw this nonsense.
Oh, also the amulet Dr. Bright wears, SCP-963. If the amulet is worn by someone for over a month, his consciousness becomes permanent in that body. So, like, even if you take the amulet off, you just have another Dr. Bright. Now, this is expressly forbid by the SCP organization, but it is also rumored that the SCP Foundation has multiple Dr. Brights working for them in secret, because sometimes the O5 Council can be very hypocritical. Sometimes. Most times, they are pretty stick to the rules.
That's like saying INSOC can be from freaking 1984 can be a bit hypocritical.
Now, Dr. Bright does a lot of fucked up things that make the SCP organization, well, less than hesitant to think of him as an asset. At the end of the day, he is an incredibly valuable part to the organization. Not only is he a genius as a doctor, but his antics typically get a result that is favorable to the SCP organization. And he is definitely on the side of the SCP organization. His loyalty has almost never been questioned. He is probably one of the most dedicated doctors to work for the SCP organization for this long. His goals definitely align with the SCP organization's goals, but sometimes his methodology and outlandish nature push things to their edge. A lot.
Oh, yeah, I mean, honestly, I understand what the SCP SCP people go through. Dr. Bright, he's like having him say that it's like, yeah, he's definitely gets things done. That's not really a plus. A nuke gets things done. He gets a lot of things done. You want someone destroyed, just nuke them. Gets things done. People aren't going to be happy, and it'll be a lot more trouble than it was worth. But hey, you got things done.
So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to read, we'll read like 25 of these things Dr. Bright is not allowed to do at the Foundation, and then we'll read one of the Dr. Bright stories.
This one, strap in, folks. This is where it becomes a two-parter.
All right, number 1. Dr. Bright is not allowed to feed anything with peanut butter to Kane. To give a little refresher, Kane or SCP-073, anything of organic nature basically turns to dust around him. Number 2, telling new researchers...
Wait. No. Wait. Don't just run past that. Peanut butter?
Yeah, peanut butter.
Like specific. So wait, the rule is that you can't.
Dr. Bright is not allowed to feed anything with peanut butter to Kane.
What the heck? What?
Anyway, Anywho,
peanut butter of all things.
telling new researchers that you can tame SCP-682 with a rolled up newspaper and a tummy rub is right out.
Wait. Which SCP?
The Immortal Lizard.
You can tell, my gosh. Dr. Bright, why do you do this? I feel like Dr. Bright half the time is just bored. Is just bored in the SCPs, in his freaking office. It's just like likes messing with people.
No longer allowed to challenge Abel to unwinnable games like tic-tac-toe. It was 3 weeks before Abel conceded to a draw.
Well, to be fair, that was smart though. Like, cause
it was
like
3 weeks.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks, but think about it like this: he beat Abel. Abel conceded. He technically won that fight. He conceded without even lifting a finger. Also, how the heck did you get Abel to freaking play a game with you? That's fun.
Abel was very competitive. Mainly in a killing type of way, but it is what it is.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes more sense. I could see that happening. All the D-class personnel, he tells Abel, is like, hey, you splattered the D-class personnel in an X, I splatter it in an O. We'll see who wins at the end of the day.
Cool. Moving on. Okay, here we go. SCP-018 is not to be taunted. Now, I pulled up the thing for 018. Apparently, it's a Super Ball made by the Whammo Company in 1969. It's a red ball, and I think it just goes insane. Yeah, it becomes a dangerous projectile. Moving.
Wait, no. You keep doing this. You keep running past these things.
Bro, there's literally hundreds of them. We can't linger on every single one.
I know, but still, like, wait a second. Like, what do you mean this thing can't be taunted? Like, is it conscious? Or is
probably.
it like freaking Dr. Kaldraki's Destructo Disc? Where it has to be thrown.
I don't know, but it defies the laws of thermodynamics.
Oh, well, that's always fun. How do you taunt a Whammo ball? That's just ridiculous. Okay, let's continue.
Anywho, giving 133 to what?
Even Andrew had to double check that. It's like, wait.
Sorry, it's putting in a name I just don't recognize. Giving 133 to Diogenes is just plain pointless. What is 133? Description. It's sure something, and I don't feel like looking it up right now, so we're gonna skip that one.
Yeah.
Attempting to disprove 343 is a horrible idea. Agents are still studying the resulting paperweight, supposedly so heavy that 343 should not be able to lift it.
Wait. So he tried to disprove 343 to 343?
That is what it looks like. SCP-343 is a male seemingly raceless humanoid in appearance with an apparent omnipotence. 343 was discovered walking the streets of Paraguay and detained after a staff member witnessed him disappear from the streets and reappeared. Wait, is this God? This is God.
Oh, okay. So he tried to disprove God. He tried to get God to disprove God. What?
He was saying he said he was doing the old can you create something so big you can't lift it?
I mean, you can't even lift it, right? Oh, that's funny. That's actually very funny. I can see why they would make him stop doing that. Because imagine that. Like, I imagine that if he could do that, that thing would just destroy everything it came in contact with. There would be nothing that would be able to support it.
Use. While it is true that no one expects the SCP Inquisition, that is only because there is no such thing.
I refuse to believe that.
Dr. Bright is not a king of anywhere or queen.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense.
Oh, also a little note, this is a revised list. Please note that more additions are being allowed. This list is meant as a joke and not an actual depiction on how the actual character Dr. Bright acts. But it's pretty funny, and it does sum up his character decently well. He is
cool.
quite the prankster.
Yes, as you can see. Hey, did you know that if you roll up a newspaper and rub the immortal lizard on his tummy, he'll be tamed. God.
Yes. Okay, next one. SCP-963 is not to be used for any recreational or procreational purposes. That is the amulet he wears.
Okay.
Recreational or
Wait a second. I have to think about that. Wait a minute. See, here's the thing. In order for these things to be on the list, that means
catch!
that Dr. Bright would have had to do it.
He just takes the amulet and he goes, think fast, and just frisbees it.
That's so terrible, but cause isn't that amulet the thing? Isn't the amulet so descriptive that it's even if it touches you for a second, you just become Dr. Bright?
Yes.
Man.
Although it is entirely possible to use SCPs currently under control of the Foundation to create a tentacle monster, no.
What the heck?
Note, not even if Dr. Palmer asks nicely.
That's just straight up evil. Why would you do this? Everyone knows what happens when you do this.
There is no market for SCP brand pornography. No, not even in Germany.
I don't even know what to say to that. First of all, how do you keep the SCP secret if you do that crap? I guess people just think that it's some weird version, weird crap.
It's mainly a bit, but they can't take this shit seriously because he might actually do it. Should not replace the buckshot in Dr. Clef's shotgun shells with any of the following. Birdseed, confetti, cake sprinkles, sawdusts, or glitter. What a shitter.
My stomach hurts. That's not okay. I just imagine that Dr. Clef loads the buckshot, sprays glitter goes at high velocity, destroys the entire area. Because people get peppered in glitter freaking paints people in blood.
What's a normal fucking shotgun? Imagine if the immortal lizard was cranking up on top of Clef. Clef just aims his shotgun and there's poof and just glitter, and then The immortal lizard just takes him out. He's like, fucking Bright!
That makes it worse.
Yes.
It's a normal shot. Like, well, that's an easy way to get rid of Dr. Clough.
The Better Business Bureau is not the correct agency for dealing with the containment failures from horrible Eldritch artifacts sold by Marshall, Carter, and Dark.
Huh? That was too specific to not be fake.
Yeah, I'm sure some of these are from actual stories.
Yeah, note, hey, for the people who watch this, the 5 people out there who watch this, quick tip. Never sell Eldritch artifacts to people you do not know. Especially if it's the random hobo called Jacob from down the street, and he says that he'll give you a decently good price on them. Just from experience, it never works out.
Yes. Okay. Okay. The next one is victims of SCP-217 are not toys. So I quickly looked up SCP-217. It is a virus that turns people into human metal.
A virus that turns people into human metal.
Yes.
Oh, God. So it's Superfly from JoJo.
Yeah, kind of.
Actually, it's more like the Ultron. More like the Ultron virus, where it just turns the superheroes into robots.
Yes, except you're just a metal statue.
Yeah, no. So it's more like Superfly.
I think you're still technically alive. When you get turned into quote unquote organic metal, it just replaces all your whole body with like pipes and shit. It's not good.
That's terrible. That's terrifying.
They're not toys. Nor are they used to be used as procs for a steampunk convention.
I'm so done. This guy. To be fair, that is smart. But to also be fair, that's a human being.
Dr. Bright is not allowed to bargain with personnel for their quote-unquote souls. Not even if he can get them a good deal.
What the heck is he using souls for? Jesus Christ.
Probably for nothing. I would assume that people started getting nervous and reported him to HR.
Like, yeah, your soul is mine. I'll come for it one day. What? You're joking, right?
Don't worry, I'll get you a good deal.
Dr. Bright. What? What could be the price of a human soul?
Anywho, that was 15, and I think now, since that took so long, we are going to read one of these stories.
Ah, yes, one of the stories from Dr. Bright. I can only imagine what kind of nonsensical crap that this has.
We're going to read Dr. Bright is no longer allowed to use temporal anomalies in order to travel back in time so he can kill Hitler.
Ah, there we go.
Now, this one's relatively short, but it's probably going to take the rest of the time that we have for this episode. Dr. Bright materialized inside Hitler's bunker. This is first fucking sentence. Wearing a full SS uniform and carrying a Walter P. 38 a gun. He pulled out the gun out of the holster and moved towards the steel doors in front of him. "Halt!" came a voice from behind. He spun around and leveled the pistol. In front of him was Dr. Sumerian. Oh, that's funny. Dr. Sumerian is an SCP YouTuber.
What?
It's open source, so he's canon. Don't worry about it. In a similar outfit, looking very confused. "What the fuck are you doing here?" Bright said, with a touch of anger in his voice. What were you? Sumerian's hand rested on his hip. Dr. Bright, motherfucker, you told me I couldn't go back in time to kill baby Hitler, which was bullshit, because I haven't even told anyone I was considering it. Alright, I remember you now. There was a slight pause for several seconds. Bright's eyebrow raised. Why are you here? Dr. Sumerian looked off to the side. I'm here to stop you from killing Hitler. In his bunker. Really? He's gonna be dead in, like, minutes, even if we don't do anything. I'd figured you'd have ethics eggheads would be fine with that. Bright trailed off. Wait. Then why wouldn't they send you to stop me? Blah, blah, blah. They'd send, like, an agent or something. A small tremor from the battle going outside rumbled through the floor as the lights flickered. Well, I mean, obviously, but I was the only one available for... Bullshit, Bright said. You're here to kill Hitler. I'm in fact here to kill Hitler, yes. Motherfucker, you're late. I called dibs. When did you call dibs? Bright waved his gun in the air. Like just now! Sumerian pursed his lips. You can't call dibs on killing Hitler? Bright shrugged. Well, I mean, we could both kill Hitler. Sumerian's nose scrunched up for a few seconds as he considered it. Right. How do we get through the door? The two of them looked at the door. It was made out of steel, with no visible hinges. Bright pointed at the door. I mean, we can just bash it down, right? They looked at each other and then turned to slamming their shoulders into the door. Both of them bounced off it one after another with a grunt and a grimace. Bright clenched his teeth to speak. Okay, that's a strong door. Sumerian grabbed his right shoulder and with a gloved hand, grabbed his shoulder. Oh my god, I can't speak. Sumerian grabbed his right shoulder with a gloved hand. Yep, a strong door. Fuck. I mean, I think maybe we need to coordinate better. If we hit this door at the same time, we might get it. Sumerian nodded. You want to go on 3? They both readied themselves, and Bright started to count. Okay, 1, 2... Wait. Sumerian interrupted. Are we going on 3, or is it like 1, 2, 3, go? We go on 3. They got ready, and Bright counted. 1, 2, 3. As they both put their shoulders against the door, they bounced off again. This time a loud crack came from the other side. A gunshot. Both of them closed their eyes and felt a little pain and failure wash over them. They had just blown the only chance they had of... Wait. The handle unlocked from the metal door, and the metal door turned. Dr. Clef, in full SS uniform, opened the door from the other side to see Bright and Sumerian reaching for their shoulders. Dr. Clef smiled widely. Ha! Were you guys here to kill Hitler?
What the heck?
It really do be like that sometimes.
So let me get this straight. 3 people went back in time to kill Hitler.
Yeah. Seems unfair. Bright called dibs.
And 2 of them didn't have the bright idea to materialize in the point where in the point beyond the iron door where he was found dead.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
God, I don't even know what to say to that. Like, what do you say to that? It's perfect. It's a perfect story. Why? All right. So what's the terrible ramifications of this? Seems like they didn't do too much wrong.
That's where the story ends.
Ah. Well then. Fun. That's fun. Great, cool. Well, why was what he did wrong?
In that particular instance, it's mainly funny and less wrong. but it's also a
Okay.
gross misuse of SCP assets in order to, have a laugh.
That's very true. I have no objections to that. That's very true.
So now we're going to read a
what
bit of a more serious one. All right, continue.
Oh, God. Nothing. Let's go. I'm ready for this.
So this one is simply called "In Regards to Death, Bright."
Oh God, no.
Now this is a long one, so if it feels like it's going nowhere, we might stop halfway through, because this is the first time that I read either one of these. I figured it would be more fun to share it with you as we read. So I've been thinking about death a lot. It's always kicked around in the back of my mind. Like, all living things are doomed to die. I'll die. Probably. Not anytime soon. But hey now, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychiatrist, so this is going to sound mostly shitty. But I want you to listen to me, and when I say dying sucks ass. As a person who went through this bullshit for 427 times, I know that getting your soul ripped out of your body is actual horseshit. And so, I'm going to zoom in the thing a little bit more so I can read this just a tad better, because I'm like an old man who needs to zoom in. I know that getting your soul ripped out of your body is actual horseshit, and so are its causes. Fatal wounds, your stomach boiling with poison, your heart stopping, yada yada yada, methods of suicide, oh my god, I can barely read this. Not because it's poorly written, just because I suck at reading. Well, out loud, I guess. Basically, the gist of this is dying sucks, and he thinks about every single time that he's wanted, like he's actually died, and the fact that it's happened so many times, and the endless horrors of it are just terrible. He feels like a punching bag where like nothing he does really matters, because at the end of the day, he knows after that month's up, he's going to have to die again and get a new body. He's worked so long and he's been through so many different people. Every time he looks in the mirror, he can barely recognize who he's in anymore. The only thing that give him individuality are the things that he does, which is partially the reason why he acts so crazy.
You know, that's actually poetic. It's sad.
It's very sad.
And existential, now I think about it.
Anywho, let's read more funny things he's not allowed to do.
Oh, Lord.
Don't let Dr. Bright get a sample of SCP-379. Let my laptop be the last victim. What the hell is this? SCP-379 object class safe.
Is that the freaking SCP? No. I'm thinking of another one. Continue.
Trying to figure out what exactly this is.
Is that the AI unit? I don't think that's the AI unit.
No, I don't think it
so
is.
That'd be funny.
Says it's a translucent, pale, silver liquid contained in a small crystal bottle. This bottle is topped with an atomizer cap, which delivers 1/2 a milliliter of clear substance inside the bottle.
Mechanical pheromone? Oh no.
Are you looking it up too?
Yeah, I'm looking it up too, and I just saw a YouTube channel that says mechanical pheromone.
Seems about right. The bottle itself has noted properties. Has no noted properties of any particular interest. However, liquid inside, while scentless, and ineffective to normal human beings, has the strangest effect, including a state not unhuman. Not unhuman infatuation upon electronic and mechanical devices. When applied to a person or some object, any machines or electronics in the vicinity, aside from those wearing SCP-379, will begin running in an overheated state, unable to process as many commands as and consuming more energy. For cybernetic systems, computers deemed quote-unquote sentience, but target seems to exhibit more humanistic qualities of typical infatuation. Huh. Yeah,
So basically...
It makes computers horny for you.
Yeah, pretty much. In all essence.
Wacky.
Oh, Lord.
Does someone have a lawnmower?
Yeah, give me a second.
Sorry about the background noise. But Dr. Bright is fascinating. All the links to all the documents we're going over will be linked down below in the description, as well as the video where I learned everything about Dr. Bright's family. It is a valuable resource.
Sorry, I didn't know that he was going to be cutting our grass today.
No problem. Anywho. Where were we? 17. Dr. Bright is not allowed to go off on my medication. That's it. Number 18. Dr. Bright may not use any form of the word accident as an excuse. Dr. Bright is not allowed to violate the dress code even on quote-unquote casual Fridays. No matter how many times you say please, Dr. Bright, we won't put any of the hats you've been asking for into the dress code.
Which includes the peacock hat and the feathered hat. Unfortunately, we cannot do that as well.
And number 20. If an SCP file says never do something, it's because we want to control. It's not because we want to control your mind. And this is. And then after there's a note by Dr. Bright that just says, yes, it is. And it's just crossed out. No, it's not. And Dr. Bright may not edit this document.
That is just terrible. You know, I feel bad for Dr. Bright in a way, but it's hard to feel bad when he does some very, very messed up crap.
What a funny guy. What a funny guy.
Yeah, what a funny guy.
Who doesn't like Dr. Bright?
Who doesn't like clowns? You know, the Joker. Who doesn't like clowns? God.
How many minutes do we have? Almost an hour at this point. We'll look into this story. If it's interesting, we will read it. If it's not, we will call it here. And it will be edited out of the video, and no one will see this, and it will skip to the ending. So this one is called The Peculiar Case of Custodian Woodworth and Dr. Bright. It was common knowledge that the janitors working for Foundation were privy to all sorts of sensitive information, containment details, gossip from the underpaid and overworked interns, and tidbits of knowledge found in the dusty corners of the long unused rooms. Despite their bright yellow attire, they were the unseen sect of the Foundation. Chances were, if there was a break room at a site with specially chatty researchers, there would also be some janitors who knew a lot more than they let on. Well, this is the story of Custodian Woodworth. Joe Woodworth, often called Joe or just Custodian by the especially cold, cleaned the halls and the rooms of Site 19's administration wing. He worked hard every day. not including the days he didn't. On those days, he could usually be found in the nearest custodian's closet, drinking whatever liquid that happened to be in his flask. Nobody really cared what Joe Woodworth did with his free time, nor did they particularly give a damn about his work ethic. In fact, the only noteworthy thing about Joe Woodworth was the discovery he made on July 2078. Okay, so this is in the future. Very cool. On July 2078 was not a noteworthy day. Nothing extraordinary or world-ending occurred during that date. No containment breaches, no new discoveries, nothing. However, this was the first day Mr. Joe Woodworth cleaned Dr. Bright's office. Always a fun thing to hear. Now, the esteemed head of Custodian Sam spoke to him. Before the fated day arrived, you're the first person to ever clean Dr. Bright's office, you hear? He's protested all the custodial services, but the higher-ups don't give any fucks about those now. Sam was hunched down, currently in the middle of lighting a cigarette, or at least attempting to. They weren't allowed, of course, but none of the janitors snitched on each other, and least they be shunned by their coworkers. Who cares about what's in that guy's office anyway? Joe bemoaned. I didn't even know that was a word. All the important documents are in a safe. We're not spies, for Christ's sake. We're frickin' janitors. Joe never cursed, not because of any moral obligations or hold on the illustration of elegance. Oh, mind you, he thought it'd make him sound different than all the other custodians. Therefore, he refused to utter a single curse word, funny as it sounded, in his thick Brooklyn accent. This is important, by the way. This isn't important, by the way. It's just amusing. Sam turned his attention back to his cigarette, not really caring about any of the particulars of Dr. Bright's office. I don't get you, Joe. Do you think I care about the particulars of Dr. Bright's office? Joe nodded and wrinkled his nose at the thick smoke blown into his face. Got it, sir. A healthy chuckle sounded from Sam, who at the jaded age of 79 responded to most forms of disrespect with a smile and the shake of his smoke-smelling beard. Well, we'll just see where that attitude gets you. When Bright found you burying your body. When Bright's found burying your body. On July 19th, 2078, oh my god, this is such a slow document, but I feel like it's going to have a good payout.
Oh god, okay.
I hope. Let me scroll down and see if anything seems interesting.
The immortal lizard got out. Yeah, it's going to have a good payout.
Yeah, whatever. We'll read it. It seems interesting enough. On July 19th, 2078, Custodian Joe Woodworth found a piece of paper. Of course, there were moments leading up to the finding. Joe getting cursed out by a disgruntled researcher who was seemingly unsatisfied with the job he did. Joe texting his wife about picking up some instant-ready meals for the kids, and of course Joe entering Dr. Bright's office. But nobody is here for that, right? The paper itself wasn't interesting at all. It was a regular loose-leaf paper commonly found in most places of work. No, what drew Dr. Joe Woodworth to this particular piece of paper was the shoddy-like child-like drawing of SCP-963. That's the amulet Bright wears. The colors looked like they had been made from some red highlighter, and the pen did a poor job of emphasizing the necklace's metallic sheen. But Joe Woodworth smiled anyway. No matter how poor of a quality it was, it made the mysterious Dr. Bright seem a little bit more human. So he took a picture, remarking about how Sam would get a chuckle out of it. He tucked the paper into a desk drawer, and what was that? The drawings continued. After a while, they were no longer confined to the side of surprisingly a very important document. Instead, they thrived a small, compact sketchbook able to fit inside of a lab coat. Crude sketches of Dr. Bright's poor intern juggling for 4 cups of coffee, Bright's co-worker sleeping in the break room, Dr. Light gazing at something above the page, a slew of curses still on her lips, Dr. Sumerian sneaking a can of Pillsbury dough into his pocket, and looking both ways in the case of prying co-workers. They were surprisingly cute. Joe felt embarrassed for thinking that, but it was a perfectly apt description of the tiny portraits cemented a fraction of time within the leather-bound book. Not the only remains of the moment long gone. Once Joe even found one of him. Looking, of course, this was multiple years after the first discovery. By then, Joe had gained a considerable amount of weight, but it bore the 5 o'clock shadow in the large bags he had earlier in life. In it, he was sweeping a hairball from the ground. It wasn't very flattering, and Joe couldn't see his own eyes through the Foundation custodial cap he wore, but Joe smiled anyway. Joe's hair slowly turned more salt and pepper as the years went on. The sunny grin omnipresent on Bright's face matured into a rigid plaster. More and more, Bright's former subject dropped like flies to the Foundation and its horrors, which isn't surprising. By the way, the 30% mortality rate in 5 years might have been tucked away in the fine print of the Foundation's contract, but it finds life in the stilted whispers of scared interns and jaded senior staff. But we are all human, and despite knowing the risk, we never fully comprehend them. And as for Mr. Joe Woodworth, continued to collect snapshots of Bright's daily life, bound within 2 thick leather covers, as he began to do something quite peculiar of him. He began to worry. Bright would occasionally try to draw his old body throughout his venture into the art world, but as the years passed by, the shapes and contours that were once so elegant sketched out on Bright's notebook began to lose their shape and fall apart. His old high cheekbones melted into a uniform curve. His slightly scruffy beard slowly faded away. Even his glasses and casual bedhead disappeared over the years. As of the now head custodian Joe Woodworth stared at the frenzied drawings of the blob of a person donning a Dr. Bright name tag, at the total lack of humanity left within this person-shaped figure, although which person he couldn't tell. And once something began to blossom in his stomach. Throughout the day, that blossom developed into a tree, which wrapped itself around his gut, until explicitly Joe Woodworth found himself in front of Dr. Harley's office with an intimidating SERIF? Sorry, SERIF. Serif font, yes, reading Serif. Head of Human Resources on the front, on the door's frosted glass. He swung open, and Joe had to jump out of the way, avoiding getting a concussion. Wait! A neat pencil-pushing type guy glared at Joe through his thick-rimmed glasses, uttering the words through his list. I'm worried about Bright. Dr. Harley sighed and closed the door on Mr. Woodworth. Before Joe could turn back defeated, the door opened again. This time, Dr. Harley held a bottle of something strong in his gloved hand. Please come in. Or don't. It'd make my job a hell of a lot easier. Joe grunted at that and then followed the man inside, who sat with his feet perched on his desk. So, you've been noticing it too, Dr. Harley said with a smile on his face, said with a sad smile. He continued on, seemingly not interested in hearing Joe's reply. Truth is, Bright's state is well known to us. The human mind can't handle 80 years of memories without going cuckoo. The functioned that functioned perfectly well when humans only lived 100 and an odd years. Dr. Harley smiled at that. Joe still doesn't know what about this amused of the man. So if you can figure it out, please let him know. Unfortunately for Bright, he's lived around 200 years, and he has to store 200 years of gunk and horror in that little glistening jewel of his. Human hardware is built for 80 years, and neither is the human psyche, apparently. Joe clenched his teeth at the apathetic stare of Dr. Harley's eyes. He knew the Foundation was a bunch of unfeeling bastards, but if you didn't, you most certainly haven't been here long enough. But the high and mighty attitude made Joe's blood boil. Have you considered doing something about it? Dr. Harley barked at that. A short, barley, odd... Blah. Dr. Harley barked at that, a short, barley, audible snort that reeked of patronization. Giving Bright a perfectly healthy mental state is harder than killing SCP-682 at this point. We're not assholes. Contrary to popular belief, we've given him enough meds and therapists... Okay, continuing on. Giving Bright a perfectly healthy mental state is harder than killing SCP-682 at this point. We're not asshole. Contrary to popular belief, we've given him enough meds and therapists where the effects of SCP-963 has slowed tremendously. Besides, he's much less rebellious with all this brain clutter. He concentrates on doing his work, the only thing he remembers at this point, and having a knowledge of the past 200 years of Foundation secrets. That's his job at the Foundation, and that's all that's required of him. Joe wanted to scream at Harley. He wanted to shout, "There's a soul within him," and show Dr. Harley the tens and tens of drawings he stored on Joe's smartphone. He wanted to show him...
Holy crap.
Well, tens and tens isn't that much. He wanted to show him...
Well, no, it's the guy. It's the weed blower guy.
Oh. He wanted to show him the bright, sunny portraits made in Dr. Bright's earlier days. He wanted to convince the Foundation to help that Bright. But Joe could feel the cold, numb voice in the back of his skull telling him the truth, whispering in his ears that Dr. Harley is right. After all, there was no cure for immortality. And so Joe turned around, grabbed his lucky broom from the men's bathroom closet, and went back to work. Joe was sweeping that night when he encountered Bright for the last time. It was part of his job to do a final large clean before he clocked out every night. Joe would start every night in the offices, the most interesting parts of cleaning, snake his way through the hallways, and end up at the messiest part of the site, the break room. But as Joe approached the break room, eager to get home before 7 p.m., he noticed someone hunched over the tables. Bright was sitting on a plastic chair. It was too small for his larger It was too small for his large, obese, D-class body. But Bright didn't seem to mind the discomfort, despite the obnoxious jingle of Joe's keys clipped to his belt. The man didn't seem to notice Joe as he's entered. Instead, Joe watched Bright. He watched Bright gingerly pick up a piece of stubby vine charcoal and flip to one of the last pages in his now worn sketchbook. Joe watched the final bits of light fade from the windows as the doctor jammed the charcoal into the page, his black powder-covered hands etching circles and spirals into the whole page. Joe watched Bright's eyes, barely blinking, not moving from the center of the page, a dull, thick, lifeless black peering into the charcoal darkness. And as Bright continued to stain his fingers and clothes with black, head custodian Joe Woodworth turned away and left. And that is the end of the story.
Oh, not what I was expecting out of that story, but hey, that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's very fucking sad. It is incredibly sad. How once rebellious, full of life doctor, doing anything to grasp at individuality, slowly lost everything and faded away to not madness, just faded.
You know, sometimes there's only nothing to fade to. Anywho,
and this is
sorry for making you guys really sad.
And this is like in the future. So this is at when Dr. Bright is over 200. Right now, where we are, he's currently, I believe, 100.
Sad future for Dr. Bright, but a future that anyone could have seen coming.
But do you feel like you understand Dr. Bright a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's the type of man who will work for a facility and do things in very unconventional ways. But he's also incredibly tragic at his core. Anywho, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. I don't think we're gonna have a part 2 to this, like reading Dr. Kondraki's Death Till Dawn story. But we definitely will do another episode in the future, maybe reading some more Dr. Bright stories, if any get suggested, or if I find any that I really want to read. Or we might do one just reading a whole bunch of the things Dr. Bright is not allowed to do in the Foundation. If you like the video, leave a like, and subscribe if you want more content like this. And, you want to say anything, Keyshawn?
Not at all. See you guys later.
See you guys next week. All right. Goodbye.